Bula Vinaka, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Swiswiki. Coming up.
I don't think it happens often, so I am not sure how well equipped we are to respond.
No major leaks so far from New Zealand's HMNZS Manawanui. Also,
it is one big thing that we are dealing with. That's why we have the police reset and we have Australia and New Zealand to help us with.
Fiji's Defence Minister addresses the country's major issues, and later on the Commonwealth is set to adopt the first ever Ocean Declaration. The Samoa government has confirmed that so far no major oil leaks have been found on HMNZS Manawanui. It comes amongst reports of diesel being seen in the water and fishermen sighting dead turtles. The New Zealand Navy ship was grounded south of Upolu Island on Saturday night while it was conducting a reef survey. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Samoa's acting Prime Minister says as of this morning there is no evidence of major oil spillages, but there were small leakages coming from the vessel, which has been contained with specialised equipment. Fuimo Simanu, Chief Executive Officer for Samoa's Ministry of Works, says New Zealand Navy divers have been assessing the area since this morning, working alongside local police.
We haven't seen any leakage or any sort of spillage, but we will have a fair idea of any damage to the environment, if there is any, probably tonight when the teams come back from their assessment.
Chief of Navy Rear Admiral Garen Golding says the ship was loaded with nearly 1,000 tonnes of diesel fuel when it sank. Some locals have reported they have already seen diesel in the water.
I can't confirm anything. There's some speculation, but we will have a true assessment of any of that, hopefully tonight when the teams come back.
Samoa Conservation Society coordinator Ioane Ituali says his organisation did not see any traces of oil at the 3 sites they visited.
When we went to the beach, we did not see any oil. We saw regular clean water and clean sand. There was no signs of any oil residue washed up to the shores.
However, Mr. Ituali says he was told by a local fisherman oil washed up on the beach Sunday, and they had seen a number of dead turtles early Monday morning.
Very concerned because this is something that is new to Samoa. This type of threat is new to Samoa. I don't think it happens often, so I am not sure how well equipped we are to respond.
Brent Ross, owner of surf tour business Offshore Adventures, says he saw both diesel and rubbish in the water close to where the ship sank. He says about a kilometre off he saw what looked like food containers. One of them was broken, letting out food.
There was food products spilling everywhere. Kyra meat, breads, frozen squid, and just lots of food products washing around. There was a lot of what took to be diesel fuel on the water.
Mr. Ross says he picked up life jackets and bits of timber floating in the water that had come from the ship.
Internationally, or all over the world, predominantly surf 1 or 2 of these waves over here. They're world-class waves. And when I had a look at it, there was just fuel flowing through the lineup, rubbish everywhere. I can't put people out in that. People can't snorkel around that area.
Mr. Ross says his guests at the moment are understanding of the situation, but hoped all parties involved in the cleanup would work quickly.
Fiji's Defence Minister has addressed some major issues plaguing the nation, such as the issue of police corruption, the Ocean of Peace proposal, and its view on rising tensions between US and China. Alicia Foon spoke with Fiji's Home Affairs Minister, Pio Tekonduadoa, on the tail end of the South Pacific Defence Ministers' meeting.
It is a foreign affairs document. Obviously, it's not born by me. It's not born from us, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but very relevant to the work that we do. Obviously, foreign affairs and defence are cousins. I think it maps a pathway for how Fiji relates not only to the region, but also to the rest of the world. And central to that document, as you have rightfully picked out, is the Ocean of Peace, and talks about how Fiji sees itself in the region going forward relative to everyone else with the interests that we share. And obviously that's based on mutual respect, understanding the quest for peace, and making sure that peace is at the center of everything. It's a great document to work with. Obviously, from us, from the defense side, we find great value in that paper. particularly when we've got the National Security and Defense Review that has been out now, and in anticipation of the National Security Strategy, which will be very well, very much related to the foreign policy white paper. When it comes, our NSS will be out by December.
And this ocean of peace is being disturbed at the moment. If you are against China's ICBM testing, are you also against the US testing missiles from Guam?
Listen, every country has their own reasons why they do that. Okay, if it's in your territory and how you test your missiles, Guam is a U.S. territory. They test the missiles there. The Chinese obviously have got their own territory. They're not testing their missiles in their own territory, but they've come down to the Pacific, and as I've noted earlier, it's usually a very, this is a sensitive issue. If we want peace, the last thing we want is missiles being tested in our own backyard. So we hope that they refrain from doing that, hopefully first and the last.
And can you speak to the release of George Speight? I guess, what happened there? People will be wanting to know. Rambuka will be wanting to clear his name. Can you speak to that?
The Mercy Commission recommended that to the President, and that is a process in itself. And the Mercy Commission had made these recommendations to the President through an entirely independent process, and that is the outcome. And, we just here, to follow the law. Yeah. Obviously, not everyone will be happy, but in time, it's only the law that keeps us, going, really, because that's what guides our actions.
And speak to the efforts about narcotics and drugs policy in Fiji.
Yeah, well, we've done so much over this short space that we've been here, the last 18 months, actually. It's not easy. Drugs are a transnational issue. Drug is a social issue. There's been so many arrests and, confiscation of drugs on the street and, from our people. The presence of drug is not good for anybody, but government, really through the Narcotics Bureau, is coordinating the technical response to that. The police are working on it. Of course, the Narcotics Bureau is one of those. And what else is there to say?
What about the corruption within the police force? The recent arrests and then historic arrests coming to light. Public don't have a lot of confidence right now in Fiji police.
It is one big thing that we are dealing with. That's why we have the police reset, and we have Australia and New Zealand to help us with. We have a direction to follow, and with the new police commissioner coming up, that should make it more clearer.
A panel of experts will discuss the urgent need for action on the global goal to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030 at the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. It's expected that the member countries will officially adopt the first ever Commonwealth Ocean Declaration. I spoke with Kevin Chan, the Senior Director of Pacific Ocean Policy at Pristine Seas, and began by asking him what the Ocean Declaration entails.
I think it entails, from what I understand, and my conversations with folks that have been involved in the drafting process, it captures a lot of what the Commonwealth leaders have said in the past about their commitments to the ocean, including their commitments to treaties that have been recently negotiated, like BBNJ, the work on the WTO subsidies agreement, the plastics negotiation that's coming up, but also, importantly, CBD and the Global Biodiversity Framework commitments. So this is 30 by 30. CHOGM happens around the same time as CBD, so it's an interesting time for countries to be rallying behind this cause. So as in a whole, I think it captures a whole bunch of ocean issues, which is great.
So just wondering, is this declaration legally binding?
No, it's not legally binding, but I think it adds a bit of political will to the work of Commonwealth states. Prior to this, the Commonwealth had the Blue Charter program, which was in a way trying to coalesce a lot of ocean objectives that Commonwealth countries were working towards. And this builds off that in a way, and it fits into that process. So what's exciting is I think it'll get through the Commonwealth. It'll allow states to work together on these objectives like protection of the ocean, and then how they might implement treaties such as the BBNJ High Seas Treaty, and negotiations for the plastics treaty is ongoing. So I think that's also helpful in building a bit more political will, putting a bit of political will behind that.
As you may have seen or heard, we've just had the New Zealand Navy ship sink on the south coast of Samoa, and locals fear that the oil spillage from that vessel will damage the reefs. So I was just wondering, how will this declaration, once it's been adopted, how will this declaration protect small island nations in these sort of crises?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. That's just happened over the last week, right? And I'm seeing like the area the vessel like sunk in is very close to like coral reef systems, which a lot of local communities rely on. And I think Samoa right now, so I'm based in New York, and I've worked with the Samoan mission there, and they're currently the chair of the Small Island Developing States, which is really great. And one of the things they advocate is the special circumstances of SIDS and how SIDS are not in the same position as other developed states, but also developing states in how they, react to certain crises like this. And I think one of the really cool things about the Commonwealth is it's very SIDS heavy. So in a way, a lot of the development priorities have a SIDS focus, which I think helps. In this particular case, I think it touches on several different environmental agreements, including MARPOL, which is the pollution protocol related to things like oil spills. And I think it's different. Like in Fiji, we've had the same thing in the past, where when a ship is sunk, just trying to combat that oil is so difficult for local communities. And there's a lot of reliance on partners in the global north to support. And I know in Samoa's case, New Zealand had sent a lot of oil spill kits to assist with remediation of the ocean in that space. So I don't know how that's going at the moment, because it seems to be breaking. But yeah, it I think just goes to show how vulnerable small island developing states like Samoa and many Commonwealth countries are to these types of impacts.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned that small island nations, they usually rely on their partners when it comes to those sort of crises. But I was just wondering, how important is the role of Indigenous Pacific leaders when it comes to ocean protection?
Yeah, I think, across the Pacific, we have, with Indigenous ocean stewards, there's been things like the Bull in Palau, Golinga, like Tambu areas and Tapu areas in Fiji. Tonga, I think there's so much Western conservation leans a lot on these Indigenous principles of protection and managing our environment in a sustainable way. So I think Indigenous leadership is so important. I think earlier this year at the Pacific Festival of Arts, there was a group of Indigenous leaders from across the Pacific that came together and spoke about what their commitments, like what their role should be in this modern system, and like how they should advocate for their people in this westernized world. So I think it still has an important role to play. Like Pristine Seas, and if I talk a little bit about the work we do in conservation space, but through our expeditions, we encounter a lot of Indigenous communities. Currently, our expedition is underway in Papua New Guinea. It's just wrapping up there, but one of the priorities we look at is looking to them for leadership in terms of what their priorities are in terms of conservation. And I think that's the way the world should be. And with Commonwealth, is comprised of a lot of Pacific communities, but other Indigenous countries and communities. I think there should be a real push to elevate these voices in these types of forums like CHOGM. We'll have King Charles there. And I think similarly, we should have chiefs and other high-ranking like folks from around the Pacific to show their solidarity with, King Charles.
So just coming back to a conversation around Pristine Seas, I understand that there'll be a panel discussion on Thursday. What will be discussed there?
So it'll be a bunch of things. One of the focuses is protection, ocean protection, and what states are doing to protect the marine environment. As I mentioned earlier, CBD will be happening at the same time, and countries come to CHOGM, to also share what they're doing and how their commitments under various treaties are progressing along. And it will be very exciting to see what Samoa has to say. Samoa, I understand we have the Prime Minister Fiame, who will be part of that panel. And I don't know this intimately, but I understand that Samoa is well on its way with its marine spatial planning process. So it would be exciting to hear from countries what their commitments are and if they're hitting their targets under the global biodiversity framework. But part of it is to talk about countries' conservation efforts, and also part of it is to talk about big announcements that countries have. And that's I think the most exciting parts. You've got a large platform at a very important annual or biannual event where leaders can highlight the successes they have underway in their countries.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.